The metal wheel screamed in his hands as the pressure built, the sound of rushing water drowning out his own heartbeat. Cold spray hit Noah Grady in the face, chlorinated and tinged with rust, as the fractured city main roared like a living thing beneath the streets of Cleveland. He had one shoulder jammed under a leaking pipe, both hands locked around a valve that didn't want to move, and 3 inches of rising water already swirling around his boots. On the concrete ledge behind him, a woman in a soaked blazer lay clutching her ribs, gasping a small black flash drive pressed tight in her fist. Above them, he could hear traffic on the bridge, cars rolling over steel, that had no idea how close it was to failing tonight. "Don't let them shut it off from up top," she rasped. "They'll bury it." Someone had cut corners. Someone had lied on inspection forms. The evidence was down here with them. Noah's fingers burned as he cranked on the valve tendons, screaming, the muscles in his forearms shaking. He could feel the old ache in his back, the souvenir from a roadside blast in Kandahar lighting up like fire. If this goes, he thought, teeth clenched, that whole span is done. And whoever's heading home for dinner up there doesn't make it. His phone buzzed in his pocket, 911 on speaker dispatcher, shouting his name through the chaos, asking if he was still with them. Noah drew in a ragged breath, planted his feet against the slippery concrete, and pushed harder, knowing this was the moment that would decide everything. Before I go any further, tell me where you're listening from tonight, and hit that like and subscribe button if you believe courage still matters in this world. Most days, Noah Grady's life didn't look like courage. At 36, he was a maintenance mechanic for the City Transit Authority, the kind of blue-collar job people only noticed when something broke. He worked in a low-slung brick garage on the industrial side of town, where the air smelled like diesel hot metal and burnt coffee. His hands were permanently stained with grease, his knuckles scarred from years of slipping wrenches, and his work shirts all had the same stitched name patch, Noah. He was the guy who kept buses from sliding on wet streets in January, who listened to the faint squeal of a failing bearing and knew it needed fixing before anyone else heard a thing. At home, in a narrow rental house on the east side, he was just Dad. To 16-year-old Harper, he was the man who burned grilled cheese if he got distracted, who never missed a school play, and who still kept her mother's picture on the fridge, even though she'd been gone for 7 years. Cancer had taken her slow, and the medical bills had taken everything else faster. Noah had carried a different uniform before this one Army combat engineer 8 years. He didn't talk about it much, but the habits lingered, the way he scanned exits without thinking, the way he checked the smoke alarms twice a month, the way he kept a basic trauma kit in the trunk of his beat-up Ford Fusion. He believed in small, practical things, showing up on time, fixing what's broken instead of pretending it wasn't, never signing his name to work he didn't trust. That's why the new contract bothered him. The city had switched to a private supplier for brake components. Sleek, polished salespeople in suits had come through the garage promising cost savings and streamlined performance. On paper, everything looked fine. The parts arrived, shrink-wrapped and stamped with all the right certifications. But when Noah installed them, he felt it. The way the pedal travel changed. The way the bus stopped just a hair slower during test drives. Nothing you could measure easily, but something you could feel in your bones if you'd spent half your life around machines. He mentioned it once to his supervisor, who shrugged and pointed at the contract hanging in the office. City signed off. We sign off. That's how it works now, the man said, tapping the paper with a pen. Don't make headaches for yourself, Grady. That night, after Harper went to bed, Noah sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee going cold, staring at the news on his phone. A headline flashed across the local station's app. Downtown bus nearly loses brakes on freeway ramp. Investigation pending. The model number of the bus rolled across the bottom of the screen. It was the same series he'd flagged in his own head, the same parts he didn't trust. And as he watched shaky cell phone footage of passengers screaming while a driver fought to keep control, Noah felt a knot form in his chest. For the first time, he wondered if signing his name that week had put someone's life on the line, if the system he worked for was more interested in saving money than saving people. That was the moment he decided he wasn't going to just fix what was in front of him anymore. He was going to find out why those brakes felt wrong, and what else was hiding behind the contracts no one wanted him to question. Noah got to the transit garage early the next morning, long before dawn burned the frost off the chain-link fence. He liked it that way. Quiet bays, empty break room, the hum of fluorescent lights, and the smell of old rubber. He could think in those hours. He could breathe. But today, the quiet didn't settle him. It felt heavy, like the air was waiting for something to crack. He'd barely set down his thermos when his supervisor, Dale Mercer, stepped out of the office with a clipboard tucked under one arm and irritation already tightening his jaw. Dale was the kind of man who blamed the weather for his own mood and blamed his workers for the weather. Middle management carved from saltine crackers, dry, brittle, and noisy. "You Grady," he snapped, though of course he knew who Noah was. Dale liked to pretend everyone under him was interchangeable. Noah wiped his hands on his work pants. "Morning. What's going on?" Dale slapped the clipboard against his chest. "Corporate wants every mechanic signing off on brake inspections twice a day, morning and night. They say you've been overly cautious." He tapped the clipboard again. "This is a business, not your personal science experiment." Noah took the clipboard. The words swam beneath the buzzing light. Overly cautious meant he'd spoken up. Overly cautious meant someone had complained. Overly cautious meant someone up the chain wanted him to sit down and shut up. He breathed slow through his nose, keeping calm. "If there's an inspection issue, we need to know. The parts aren't responding right." Dale scoffed. "Oh, for God's sake. You've got a feeling. Fantastic. Should we pull every bus off the road because Grady's got a hunch the city already approved these parts?" Noah didn't raise his voice. He didn't step forward or argue. He just said, "Someone almost died yesterday. And someone almost dies every time a driver sneezes on the freeway." Dale fired back. "That's not our department. You do what you're told, sign the damn papers, and stop making my job harder." Noah stood still, heat blooming under his collar. He'd been talked down to before by officers who didn't trust enlisted guys by corporate reps who knew nothing about tools. But today, something in the tone cut deeper. Dale leaned closer. "And drop the brake paranoia. I'm not babysitting a mechanic with ghosts in his toolbox." He walked away, muttering loud enough for the whole garage to hear. Used to be soldiers came back knowing how to follow orders. Noah didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened. He felt every pair of eyes in the garage glance at him, then look away, a mix of pity, discomfort, and fear of being associated with the man who raised concerns. He went to his work bay, set down the clipboard, and let the silence settle over him again. It didn't feel quiet anymore. It felt like warning lights. By noon, the garage was a furnace of noise impact wrenches, rattling compressors, kicking on radios, playing talk shows above the clatter. Noah worked through it like he always did, checking a bus's suspension, listening for the faint grind that didn't belong. That's when the corporate rep showed up. A woman in a tailored red coat hair pinned tight heels, clicking like a metronome of authority. She walked straight toward him, not bothering with protective gear, not bothering to announce herself, just appeared at the edge of the pit like a figure in a doorway nobody wanted to walk through. "You're Noah Grady," she said. Not asked, stated. He straightened. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Victoria Brandt, Oversight Liaison for Next Trans Components. I'm here because of a complaint. Dale appeared behind her too fast, wearing the self-satisfied grin of a man who thinks reinforcements have arrived. Victoria folded her arms. You've been raising questions about our brake line assemblies. Noah chose his words carefully. I've been noticing performance changes after installation. Slight delays in stopping response. Not extreme, but consistent. Victoria flicked her wrist dismissively. We tested them extensively. There is no issue. I'm telling you what I'm seeing, Noah replied, tone even. You're telling me you feel something is wrong, she corrected, a faint smirk curling her lip. I need data, not instincts. Noah swallowed. Instincts keep people alive. And instincts also start rumors that cost cities millions. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I looked at your file, Mr. Grady. 8 years Army. A commendable record, though. I notice you didn't stay. Sometimes returning veterans interpret normal workplace pressure as threat. Dale nodded sagely behind her, as if she'd delivered gospel truth. Noah's shoulders stiffened. Not anger, just hurt deep and quiet. He'd worked hard to build a life here. He didn't parade his service around. He didn't use it as a shield. He fixed what needed fixing. Victoria handed him a form. Effective immediately, you are restricted from independently approving brake inspections. Another mechanic must co-sign everything you touch. This is to protect the city, your co-workers, and frankly, yourself. She didn't say the rest. He heard it anyway. We don't trust you. After she left, Dale clapped him on the back. Not kindly, not gently. See? If you'd just kept your mouth shut, we wouldn't be in this mess. Noah didn't react. Not outwardly. Inside, something tightened like a bolt over-torqued to the edge of snapping. He ate lunch in his truck, alone, staring at the sandwich he couldn't taste. Heavy snowflakes drifted across the windshield, gathering in the corners of the wipers. His thermos sat unopened beside him. He thought about how he'd tried to warn them, how no one wanted to hear, how money beat safety every time someone let it. He picked Harper up from school later like he always did. She slid into the passenger seat, backpack hitting the floorboard with a thud. Hey, Dad? She smiled, brushing hair out of her face. You okay? You look tired. He tried to smile back. Just a long day. She studied him the way only a daughter can. Is it because of that bus accident? People were talking about it at school. Some girl's mom said it was maintenance failure. That's not on you right. Something sharp twisted in Noah's chest, his worst fear spilling from the mouth of someone he'd die to protect. No, he said softly. That's not on me. But you think something's wrong with the parts? He glanced at her, this kid he was raising alone, this kid who read him better than anyone else. I think something might be, and I don't want anyone getting hurt. She nodded quiet for a long time. Then you're doing the right thing. Simple words. But they landed like a lifeline. That night, while she finished homework at the kitchen table, he opened his laptop and pulled up the bus diagnostics he'd saved. Every vibration reading, every braking cycle, every test performed after the new parts were installed. He wasn't a data analyst, but he knew patterns. He knew when something didn't add up. Just after 10, Harper came to kiss his cheek goodnight. She paused, worried. Are they giving you trouble? Nothing I can't handle, he said, but she squeezed his hand. You don't have to handle everything alone. When she went to bed, Noah stared at the glowing screen until his eyes burned. Then he saw a discrepancy in the calibration logs. Not dramatic, not obvious, but consistent and buried deep in the software. Someone had altered performance thresholds, not enough to fail testing, but enough to degrade braking under stress. His breath caught in his throat. This wasn't a bad batch, this wasn't wear and tear, this was intentional. The house felt suddenly too small, too quiet. A stillness before thunder. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, "Stop digging." No signature. No name. Just 2 words that felt like fingers closing around his life. He stared at the message pulse rising, knowing with absolute certainty someone else knew exactly what he'd found. And someone didn't want him finding anything more. Outside, the wind howled against the siding. Inside, Noah felt the pressure around him tightening coil by coil by coil. Something was coming. Something big. The message, "Stop digging," didn't leave Noah's mind for even a minute. He kept trying to push it aside, to focus on work, to focus on Harper, to pretend he wasn't in the crosshairs of someone far more powerful than a garage supervisor. But the words hung behind his eyes like after images burned into a screen. By late Thursday afternoon, the temperature had dropped below freezing. Snowmelt from the earlier storm had refrozen along the edges of the streets, making everything shine in a way that was beautiful from a distance and dangerous up close. The transit yard buzzed with pre-weekend pressure buses coming in for maintenance checks, drivers signing end-of-day reports, dispatchers arguing into radios about routes delayed by black ice. Noah clocked out, but didn't leave. He sat in his truck in the far corner of the lot, watching workers hustle between the bays, waiting for the last of them to go. The discrepancy he'd found in the brake calibration logs wasn't theoretical. It was tampering. And something in him, the part forged in desert heat and old fire, knew this wasn't an accounting mistake. He sat still until the lights in the office went dark and Dale's truck pulled out with music thumping too loud in the cab. Only then did he open the laptop in his passenger seat again. The calibration entries were there, but something else was too, now a new file he hadn't created. A system overwrite, time-stamped only minutes earlier. It was wiping out test logs one by one, clearing the documented differences he'd spent nights studying. Someone wasn't threatening him anymore, they were erasing evidence in real time. His chest tightened. If those brakes failed again, if another bus lost stopping power on the freeway or in a school zone, people would die. And whoever altered these logs was counting on the blame landing on mechanical failure or human error. He should bring this to the police. He should call the city. He should do anything except walk back into the garage alone. But when he pictured Harper waiting for him at home, trusting him to do the right thing, the decision formed itself. He got out of the truck, breath frosting in front of him, boots crunching over icy gravel. The garage door was locked, of course, but Noah had keys. All mechanics did. He let himself in, closing the metal door quietly behind him. Inside, only the security lights glowed dim orange, casting long shadows across tool benches and hydraulic lifts. Buses sat parked in their bays like hulking steel animals at rest. The silence was unnerving, thick enough to feel. He walked straight to Bay 7. The unit logged in the system as undergoing calibration that afternoon, the one generating the most anomalies. If tampering had happened anywhere, it was this one. As he approached the bus, he noticed fresh footprints in the dirt around the tires, too clean to belong to any mechanic he knew. And the panel covering the onboard diagnostics module was loose, not fully screwed in. Someone else had already been here. He opened the panel with slow, controlled movements. Inside the interface module blinked with pale green lights. Normal. But the external connector port had a residue around it, the kind left by a third-party device, a portable programming unit. Unauthorized. Invisible to routine inspections. He swallowed. Someone was rewriting the bus's braking behavior directly into the system. Not in the parts, in the software. He leaned in, inspecting further. That's when a floorboard creaked behind him. "Grady," a voice said. Dale's voice. Except it didn't sound like Dale. Not irritated or petty. Low. Cold. Noah turned slowly. Dale wasn't alone. Behind him stood a man Noah didn't recognize. Tall mid-40s, wearing a city badge on a lanyard, but lacking the manner of anyone who actually worked municipal hours. His posture screamed authority, but the wrong kind. Corporate authority. The kind that answers to no one local. "I told you to stop making headaches," Dale said, stepping forward. He wasn't smirking anymore. Fear flickered around his eyes. Fear and something like desperation. "But you just couldn't let it go." The badge man raised a brow at Noah. "You're accessing restricted modules without authorization. That's grounds for termination, Mr. Grady, and criminal charges if the city chooses to pursue them." Noah didn't move. Someone is altering safety systems. Those logs were wiped tonight. Dale winced, but the other man's face remained neutral. "What you saw is routine diagnostic cycling. You're misunderstanding the technology. That so?" Noah asked quietly. "Then where's the tool that connected to this port tonight, because it left residue? Who was in here?" The badge man's eyes hardened. "You need to leave now. You've made the situation far more complicated than it needed to be. A threat. Plain enough anyone could hear it." Noah stepped back from the diagnostics panel, but not because he was intimidated. He needed space to think, space to move. His pulse thudded through his throat. "What happens," he asked softly, "if a school bus uses one of these parts? Or a commuter bus full of families? What happens if brakes fail again?" Silence. Heavy. Telling. He could see it now. Dale buckling under pressure, justifying corners being cut. Maybe getting paid to look away. And the badge man. Someone higher. Someone who knew exactly what was at stake. "It's done," the man said. "You're going home. And you'll drop this." Noah exhaled slowly. Not in anger. In acceptance. Some moments define a man long before they arrive. And when they do arrive, the choice is already made. "You can fire me," he said. "You can threaten me. But I'm not walking out of here until that bus is safe." The badge man's jaw tightened. "Then you're not walking out of here at all." He reached toward his coat, and Noah saw the movement telegraphed in the dim light. Not a gun Noah had been around too many to mistake the weight shift. More like a device. Something to fry the module and destroy whatever logs remained. Noah moved before thinking training older than Harper, older than this job, older than the quiet life he'd built around wounds that didn't show. He lunged forward, not fast, but deliberate, grabbing the man's wrist and slamming it against the metal bus frame hard enough to loosen his grip. The device clattered to the floor, skidding under the lift. Dale yelped, stumbling backward, eyes wide. "Stop, both of you, stop!" But the badge man wasn't stopping. He swung with his free arm, but Noah blocked stepping in, using the man's momentum to pivot him sideways into the diagnostic panel. It sparked small, sharp blue flashes jumping between wires but didn't catch fire. "Get off me!" The man barked, wild with surprise that a mechanic could do more than turn a wrench. But Noah wasn't thinking about skill or advantage. He was thinking about Harper. About the bus she might ride one day. About the driver yesterday, gripping a steering wheel with terror in his eyes. He tightened his hold just enough to keep the man pinned. "You're not touching that system again." The man struggled, but Noah shifted his weight, planting his boots using leverage and experience to keep control, without escalating to something that would do real harm. Dale hovered uselessly near the door, hands trembling shock, freezing him where he stood. Then headlights flashed across the far window, bright, sweeping arcs cutting into the dim garage. A horn sounded. 2 short bursts. A transit supervisor doing rounds, checking for open doors or late-night activity. Relief flickered through Noah, but also urgency. This was his chance to get out, to bring this into the open before someone silenced him for good. He released the man abruptly. The badge man staggered, grabbing the edge of the bus for balance. "Leave," Noah ordered. His voice held no bravado, just truth. "Tonight, this ends. I'm reporting everything. And if you come near me or my family again, every log, every file, every copy I've already backed up is going straight to the state inspector." The badge man's eyes widened, not at the threat, but at the implication. "You made copies?" Of course Noah had. The moment he noticed the anomalies. The moment fear settled into purpose. Outside, boots crunched across snow. A knock echoed at the garage door. "Anyone in there?" a voice called. The spell broke. Dale scrambled to the badge man's side. "We should go. Now." They slipped out the side exit just as the supervisor unlocked the main door. Noah stepped backward, heart-pounding adrenaline shaking through his limbs. "You okay, Grady?" the supervisor asked, scanning the bay. Noah steadied his breathing. "Yeah, just finishing up." He didn't mention the fight. He didn't mention the device under the lift. He didn't mention the man who'd threatened his life, or the logs that someone tried to erase. Not yet. But tonight he'd crossed a line he couldn't step back from, and the people he'd just stood against now knew it. When he left the garage, snow falling in thick, sound-muffling sheets, he felt the weight of the choice he'd made settle across his shoulders. A dangerous choice, a necessary one. For the first time since Afghanistan, he wasn't just repairing machinery. He was standing between danger and the people who didn't know it was coming. And someone somewhere realized they'd underestimated him. Snowfall softened the world overnight, blanketing the transit yard in white and muting the usual clang of morning tools and engines. When Noah pulled in just after dawn, everything looked deceptively peaceful, like nothing dangerous had happened only hours earlier. Like no one had threatened him, like he hadn't pinned a man against a bus to stop him from destroying evidence, like he hadn't crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. But the quiet didn't fool him. Not today. He walked into the garage expecting whispers, sideways, stares, accusations. Instead, he stepped into a circle of silence, a rare thing in a place normally run by noise. 3 mechanics stood near Bay 7, staring at the diagnostics panel Noah had repaired after the scuffle. The scorched marks across its metal housing were plainly visible. They weren't supposed to be there. Everyone knew that. One of the younger techs, Mark, looked up abruptly when Noah approached. His face was pale. "Grady, did you see this? Somebody must have slammed something into the panel last night. Hard. Nobody touched that panel without signing the log. Nobody damaged it without triggering questions. And nobody visited the garage after hours, except mechanics." Noah opened his mouth, uncertain how to answer when Dale's truck screeched into the lot. He got out too fast, like he didn't have time to pretend everything was normal. His expression wasn't defiant today. It wasn't superior. It was scared. He stormed across the bay, but stopped short when he saw Noah. The 2 men looked at each other a long, loaded moment in the thick garage air. "You and I need to talk," Dale muttered, but his voice had none of yesterday's bite. Before Noah could respond, the garage office door swung open and Operations Director Marlene Ortiz stepped out. She was tough, sharp-eyed, respected. She didn't waste time on games. If she was here this early, something was happening. "Grady," she called in my office. "Now! Dale, you come too." The techs exchanged looks. Everyone knew what closed-door meetings meant. Someone was in trouble. Noah followed Marlene inside. The door clicked shut behind them. She didn't sit down. Neither did Dale. Marlene folded her arms. At 3:20 this morning, transit supervisors reviewed security footage. They saw unauthorized personnel in the garage. Noah's heart kicked, but she kept going. 2 individuals, not mechanics, not city employees. One of them used a badge that doesn't exist in our system. The other had a key we can't trace. They accessed Bay 7, stayed 9 minutes, then left through the side exit. She looked from Dale to Noah. "Either of you want to explain why unknown men were inside one of my garages after hours?" Dale's mouth opened, but nothing coherent came out. His cheeks reddened. Sweat beaded near his temple. He was unraveling even if he tried not to show it. Noah Marlene said, "Did you see anything? Anything at all?" The question hung in the air like a live wire. Noah forced himself to breathe. He couldn't lie. He couldn't protect the people who tried to cover up a citywide danger. And he couldn't keep silent, not when the lives of riders, drivers, and families were involved. "I saw them," he said quietly. Dale dropped his gaze. Marlene blinked once. "You saw them?" "Yes," Noah said. "I came back last night. I found someone accessing the braking system on bus 477. They weren't mechanics, and they weren't supposed to be here." He could feel Dale's stare burning into the side of his face. "What were they doing to the bus?" Marlene asked. "Rewriting calibration logs," Noah said. "Covering tampering." Silence cracked across the room. "Tampering?" Marlene's voice was hard now. "On braking systems, yes." Marlene exhaled through her nose, a veteran's sound, the sound of someone who's heard a lot, but not this. She looked to Dale. "Is he telling the truth?" Dale's lips trembled. I don't know what he saw. Probably misinterpreting." "Stop," Marlene snapped. His mouth closed instantly. She turned back to Noah. "What exactly did they change?" Noah took a breath. "Now or never. They altered threshold tolerances, lowered fail-safes. The brakes respond slower than they should under pressure. It's why we've had those near misses these last few weeks." Marlene stared at him like she was seeing him for the first time. "How do you know that you're not a software engineer?" "I know what I'm looking at," Noah said simply. "I've worked with mechanical electrical interfaces for almost 20 years. "Military?" she asked quietly. He hesitated, but nodded. "What kind of work?" And just like that, the calm snapped. The question dragged him back, hot wind, sand, metal, tearing like fabric, the way you don't forget the sound of something exploding too close. He steadied himself. "I was a combat engineer," he said. 8 years. I handled vehicle integrity systems, field repairs under pressure, sabotage, countermeasures, emergency diagnostics. If something could take a convoy down, it was my job to see it coming." Marlene absorbed that. Slowly. Carefully. It wasn't a dramatic revelation. It wasn't a confession of heroism. But it shifted the air around them. Dale's face drained of color. He had spent weeks treating Noah like a stubborn mechanic with a chip on his shoulder. Now he understood he'd been trying to belittle the one man trained to spot exactly the thing he didn't want spotted. "What you're describing," Marlene said, "if proven, is felony-level corruption. I know Noah said. And last night she continued, you physically prevented these men from finishing what they were doing." Noah didn't deny it. Why, she asked, softly. He thought of Harper's quiet voice. "You're doing the right thing." He thought of the school bus on that news clip fishtailing on the ramp. He thought of every driver who trusted the machine beneath them. Because someone had to. Noah answered. And because if I walked away, people were going to get hurt. Maybe killed. Dale let out a weak breath, sinking into the chair behind him. His shoulders caved. I didn't know he whispered. They told me it was routine, that we were saving money, that the city wanted faster turnaround times. The city didn't authorize illegal programming changes, Marlene said sharply. You're a supervisor. You should have known better. Dale's eyes glistened with regret and fear. Marlene turned back to Noah, voice steadier now. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Because the proof kept disappearing, he said. Logs overwritten, complaints dismissed, and someone sent me a text telling me to stop digging. She stiffened. A threat? Yes. Marlene walked to her desk, sat and opened her laptop with purpose. Mr. Grady, I need you to stay in this office until transit safety and the city inspector arrive. They'll want to hear everything. Dale looked like a man awaiting a verdict. Noah felt suddenly drained. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him hollow. But somewhere beneath that emptiness, a steadier feeling pulsed. He'd done the right thing, even when it meant standing alone. A knock came at the door, firm, urgent. A uniformed transit safety officer entered, along with a woman in a navy coat carrying a federal ID. Her presence pulled the air tight. She introduced herself calmly. Inspector Lena Ramsey, Department of Transportation Oversight. We received an anonymous tip this morning. Something about software tampering and threats made to an employee. Marlene nodded. That would be Mr. Grady. Inspector Ramsey turned to face him fully. You're the mechanic who discovered the calibration discrepancies. Yes. She studied him posture, steadiness, quiet control. I read your military file on the way here. You're not just a mechanic. You worked counter-sabotage protocols on armored vehicles. It wasn't a question. Dale whispered almost to himself, "Oh my God." Inspector Ramsey continued. The tip we received included footage grainy but clear enough showing two individuals attempting unauthorized access to bus 477. You confronting them, preventing them from destroying the module. Noah's chest tightened. Someone had recorded it. Someone had backed him up. You should know, she added, lowering her voice. Your intervention may have saved lives. And it exposed something much bigger than a parts supplier. Marlene stood straighter. How much bigger? Ramsey met her eyes. City contract big. State level big. Possibly federal procurement big. The words settled like thunder rolling across the room. Then Ramsey looked at Noah again, different this time. Not evaluating, not skeptical, respectful. I won't mince words, she said. We need someone with your skill set to walk us through exactly how these systems were altered. We don't get many people who can bridge the gap between mechanical and digital sabotage, and fewer who recognize it under pressure. Dale stared at Noah like he'd never seen him before. Marlene took a slow breath. Mr. Grady, would you be willing to assist the investigation? Noah felt the weight of the moment, not pride, not vindication, but something heavier. Responsibility shifting onto his shoulders in a way that felt familiar, like an old burden returning. He could hear Harper's voice again. You don't have to handle everything alone. But maybe this wasn't handling it alone. What happens if I say yes? He asked quietly. Ramsey closed her notebook. Then everything you've done so far becomes the beginning, not the end. And we move forward with you as a protected witness and a technical advisor. And if I say no, then you walk out of here, she said gently. But the people who sent that text, they won't stop. Noah exhaled slowly. Snow tapped lightly against the office window, flakes drifting like silent choices. This wasn't the life he'd planned, but it felt like the one he couldn't walk away from. He lifted his gaze. "Tell me what you need," he said. Ramsey nodded once, as if she'd expected nothing less. And just like that Noah Grady quiet mechanic single dad man everyone underestimated stepped into a role he never asked for, but might be the only one qualified to fill. Outside, the snow continued falling, soft but relentless. So did the new future forming around him. The investigation moved fast once the truth came to light. By noon the same day, transit safety had sealed off the affected buses, and Inspector Ramsey had a small team scraping through every line of code in the braking systems. Dale stepped down from his supervisor position before he was pushed, shame saturating every movement he made. He wouldn't look Noah in the eye, not out of anger anymore, but out of regret. Other mechanics approached Noah quietly throughout the morning. Small nods, a hand on the shoulder, a thermos of coffee left on his tool cart without a word. They didn't know everything that had happened, but they knew enough. And for the first time in a long while, Noah didn't feel invisible. He felt seen. By late afternoon, inspectors found exactly what he warned about: tampered thresholds buried beneath false cert logs. The supplier's software contained deliberate backdoors that allowed unauthorized remote adjustments. Someone had hidden danger inside a safety system and counted on no one noticing. But someone did notice. And now the trail was pointing far beyond the garage. When Inspector Ramsey returned to the office, she carried a folder thick with printed data and a new clarity in her tone. "Mr. Grady, your discovery will be part of a formal federal referral, and we'll be recommending that the city contract you as a technical specialist for as long as this investigation runs, and possibly beyond." He blinked, thrown. "Me, You're not just anything," she interrupted. "You caught what an entire department missed. You prevented evidence from being destroyed, and you stood your ground when you had every reason not to." Dale, sitting across the room, waiting for his final HR meeting, finally spoke. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Grady. You tried to warn me. I didn't want to believe something so big could be happening under my watch." Noah didn't gloat or smirk or rub it in. He simply nodded. "I hope you learn from it." And for the first time since Noah had known him, Dale looked like he truly might. That evening, when Noah picked up Harper, she slid into the car with the usual explosion of backpack and jacket. But when she saw his face, really saw it, she paused. "Something happened today," he exhaled, letting the weight soften just a little. "Yeah, something did." "Was it scary?" she asked. It was, he admitted, but it was necessary. She reached over and squeezed his arm, a simple gesture that told him she understood more than she let on. "I'm proud of you." And hearing that made everything, the threats, the fear, the confrontation, feel strangely small. In the weeks that followed, the case widened. Prosecutors opened inquiries. Contracts were frozen. The supplier's executives were subpoenaed, and at least one senior official resigned before sunrise the day after agents visited his office. Newspaper articles mentioned a transit mechanic whose diligence triggered the investigation, though Noah declined every interview. He didn't need the spotlight. He just needed the buses to be safe. The garage changed too. New supervisors came in, people who listened, asked questions, cared about more than budgets. Mechanics received additional training. Safety protocols were rewritten. And not a single person rolled their eyes anymore when Noah raised a concern. 3 months after the investigation began, the city offered Noah a new role, lead safety auditor for heavy fleet, a hybrid position bridging mechanical and digital oversight. The salary was better than anything he'd earned before, But that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that they trusted him, trusted his instincts, his experience, his judgment. On his first day in the new position, he stood in the garage doorway as mechanics gathered for morning briefing. Marlene introduced him with a tone that carried respect, not obligation. When she finished, the room broke into quiet applause. Not rowdy, not showy, just genuine. And Noah realized he'd never received applause for anything in his entire adult life, not even in the army. He didn't know what to do with it except nod and get to work. A year later, the garage felt like a different place. Break room chatter wasn't about frustrations. It was about improvements, audits, successes. Harper had grown taller somehow, both child and young adult at once, and liked telling her friends her dad helped catch the bad guys in real life, though Noah always insisted he was just doing his job. But the truth was simpler. He'd done the right thing when it was hard, and that had changed everything. One quiet Saturday morning, Noah and Harper stopped by the garage so she could grab the science project she'd forgotten in his office. Snow fell in slow, lazy flakes outside like the world was taking its time. As she rummaged through the desk drawers, she asked, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you didn't say something?" He looked around the garage, the lifts, the buses, the people who depended on them. He thought about the lives that moved through the city every day, never knowing how close they came to danger. "Yeah," he said softly. "I do. And does it scare you?" He considered that. It used to. Now, it reminds me why paying attention matters. Harper closed the drawer and came to stand beside him. "I think you're brave." He smiled gently. "I think I'm just stubborn. Stubborn can be brave," she said, shrugging. He put an arm around her shoulders as they walked back to the car. Snow whispered against the pavement. The city was waking up slow, and Noah felt for the first time in a long while steady in a way that went deeper than circumstance. He had found a place where his experience mattered, where people listened, where doing the right thing wasn't just tolerated, it was needed. And in a world full of noise and shortcuts and looking the other way, maybe that was its own kind of heroism. Sometimes the right thing isn't loud. It isn't glamorous. It isn't even recognized by most. Sometimes it's just a quiet man in a cold garage, seeing a danger no one else saw, and choosing to speak up even when it would have been easier to stay silent. And that simple choice, repeated again and again, has a way of shaping the world more than anyone realizes.